Okay. So while we wait for others to join in, you're welcome, Cindy, Sipula, you're welcome, Leonard, you're welcome, Uma, you're welcome, Mangoke, Esther, Mama Bolo. It's been a while, Mangoke. Hope you're fine. Welcome, Vivian. Good morning. If you're in Kenya, good afternoon already. If you're in Zambia, it should be afternoon, so okay, or near afternoon. You know, you're 1 hour um ahead of the time here. The time here is just 3 minutes shy of 11 a.m. here in Nigeria. So and just like I was saying, I was going to show us just few pictures we received from fellows that attended the climate summit uh, yesterday. So just to briefly see some of us there. Um, so let me see. I think I have the right pictures. Yes, yes, yes. The African Climate Summit just ended a few so that was yesterday. But this week is also a continuation of that event, and you must have seen on LinkedIn that we referred to a statement or the speech by the Minister for International Development in Canada that spoke to more youth participation and um, um, investments for climate change adaptation in Africa. In this picture, I think I recognize one of us here, Esther in Kenya. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for some of us that were able to meet. The intention of connecting fellows was that we would have more time to hang out really and exchange ideas, exchange some really exciting time. So that was the intention. So some of us, really happy that some of us were able to make it to the summit. One thing that conferences and summits do is that you meet people that are able to challenge you. You feel like you are a part of something good, something great, um a great cause, really, and aren't you supposed to be part of that? So it's still going to be continuing today and through the week with the climate week. So I wanted to just put that out there. I also want to, recognize, okay. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I wanted to highlight that also. Yeah, so that was Esther in the middle of this. Thank you very much for sharing, Esther. Thank everyone that was able to receive the call and responded accordingly. Today we would continue with the course that we have at hand. I hope we are ready with our questions. The facilitator will join anytime from now. Should you want to speak, should you want to use the microphone, please just, with a raise of hand, just, let me know. You can unmute your mic. Ramat, you're welcome. Messi. Okay, so someone who wants to speak. Omar, okay, you want to speak? Okay, so let's do this. Hi, Omar.
Good day, sir.
You can unmute your mic. Okay, it's unmuted. How are you? Good morning.
Yes, sir. I'm good. And how are you too?
Oh, I'm good.
Sir, I want to ask about those of us who were not able to make it to any of the groups for project. We
Okay.
were asked to add our name to a particular list in the WhatsApp platform, and yet we are not yet informed on which group are we.
Okay. So may I know? Oh, okay. So may I know your lesson? Okay. So the facilitator would join us anytime soon, but this issue is being resolved. So no problems. We'll consider your
Okay, sir.
question and just
I think we need to know
accordingly.
our.
Yes.
We
I
need.
just mentioned, that the intention of the list, right, is to take account of every one of us that have not yet been assigned to groups. So you just put your name in the list for those that have not been assigned to groups. I'm suspecting that you reside in the north. So where exactly in the north do you stay?
Northeast.
No, Northeast. So I think Northeast has a group. Please, if you're the group coordinator of Northeast, please share the WhatsApp group link on the Nigerian group for Umar to join and every other person. So I think
All right.
that's solved that. All right,
Okay.
so you're welcome everyone again to today's session. Our facilitator is here on the call with us. We had a very interesting time on Monday, and I would give him the floor to kickstart the program. Like I said, please come with your questions and let us just come, prepared. We are here to learn, and let's just go on with this. All right. Good morning, Abiola. Good morning. You're welcome
Hi,
again to
Mayowa.
another
How are
day.
you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for your support. Thank you for this. You're welcome to another day. Abiola is the co-founder at the Badili Institute. Does a lot in terms of sustainability, environmental sustainability, and all of that, EU capacity building. And of course, Abiola has been here on Monday, and he will just go on with the class. You're welcome, Abiola. Good morning.
Thank you, Mayowa. I don't know if the class is full enough yet, but I'm happy to give you another 5 minutes. Maybe you could just then let them join, but I'm happy to give you another 5 minutes if you need to get other people to join in the session.
Okay. Yes, I think we should just wait another 5 minutes. But while we are waiting, I'd like to introduce us to Abiola. Just a second, please. So for some of us that are just joining in the class today, I'd like to just take us through some of the works that Abiola has been into. And just a second for that. Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Are you able to see my screen? If you can see my screen, please just yes. I have a lot of my people here. Good morning, everyone. If you're just joining in, this is a new course. We started on Monday, and we started and more like completed it on Monday. But this is a fresh day. We're going to be learning new stuffs. You can ask your questions, like I said. Abiola is on the call. The name of facilitator for this course, climate change, sustainability, and global public health, is Abiola Oshuni. Abiola is the Chief Responsibility Officer of Parallel Point Consults and co-visioner the Badili Institute. A little something about Abiola. Abiola is a versatile professional with extensive experience in various sectors, such as financial sector, health, international development, public policy, business management, and governance. He has worked with prestigious organizations, including the World Bank, Global Fund, USAID, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, providing technical advisory and support for projects and programs. Abiola has led numerous projects focusing on sustainability, both in the public and private sectors, and has collaborated with governments and companies worldwide, such as Access Corporation, Qualcomm, and various state governments in Nigeria. Abiola serves as the board on the board of multiple non-profits organizations providing advisory services on sustainability, health, education, technology adoption. Abiola's accomplishments include leading the design and deployment of the largest mobile health solution utilizing CompCare in Africa from 2015 to 2018. He has also successfully resolved the 2016 acute methanol. Yes, please go ahead. If you feel impressed, if you feel honored and pleased to have Abiola in our midst, please just go on to just show your appreciation, jam those hands. There's an emoji the feature on your Zoom. Just go ahead. So Abiola has he successfully resolved the 2016 acute methanol poisoning case in Ondo State, that's in Nigeria, and developed a highly regarded early digital health COVID-19 response success story used by Ogun State. Furthermore, Abiola has played a pivotal role in multiple public-private partnerships projects aimed at increasing direct value investments in health. He possesses a diverse educational background, having received training from renowned institutions such as the UCLA Anderson School of Management, University of Edinburgh, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Lagos Business School. Abiola is driven by his vision to establish sustainable global brands originating from Africa. He is the co-founder of the Badili Institute, and there are so many more things that you would get to know if you follow Abiola. Abiola is on LinkedIn with the name Abiola Oshuni. With our applause and our gestures, with the use of the emoji, let us welcome Abiola to our midst. Take on the course Climate Change, Sustainability, and Global Public Health. Abiola, you're welcome again. Thank you for being able to join us this morning.
Thank you, Mayowa, and I'm honored to be taking the session again on climate change and sustainability and global health. I don't know if you could just let me know if you can see me by just putting your thumbs up in the comments, or just generally putting your thumbs up. Thank you very much. I don't know if you also followed, for those in Nigeria, some of you must have followed the resolution of, okay. So let me put on my camera so you can also see me as well. That works for you. I don't know, Mayowa, I can't figure out the camera feature.
Okay, so let me just do this. Yeah, so your video is on, so okay. Maybe you could just, okay.
Does this work for you now?
Yes.
Perfectly. Okay, so thank you very much. Someone had requested that Smith and Wakocha, fantastic. Good to have everybody online this morning. I said, as a little bit of it, I'm sure some of you must have that are in Nigeria must have had opportunity to listen yesterday to the declaration of the court, the High Court with respect to the presidential uh, ruling from the elections. For others across Africa, you would have probably been occupied with the African Climate Summit, and it ended yesterday with the Nairobi Declaration, where the UAE pledged an additional sum for climate action. You know, and this is going to be something we'll speak about today because, interestingly, the West and developing countries are consistently pledging, what would you call it? Pledging towards climate action. But there is a conversation, just like you say in governance, there's difference between and it's the same way when you make a pledge, there's a difference between when you make a pledge and there's a performance of that pledge actually. So, it's like I make a promise and I don't, So I just wanted to start with, if for those that had the opportunity of watching the climate summit, what were your takeaways? I'm happy to take a few of you, one or two of you, what were your takeaways from the summit and what were the new things you learned from the summit? I'm happy to take two or three of you if you have some thoughts around the summit. Over to you, Maya. Could you help me coordinate that? Two or three persons that are able to, talk about their takeaways from the summit.
Yes, thank you very much. So yes, okay. So I know that there were a number of Kenyans that were that were at the venue, and some of them have shared pictures. So someone wants to speak. Smith's Wokocha. Smith is I know he's big on climate change and all of that. So let me allow Smith to. So Smith, you can unmute your mic and let's learn from you. Let's yeah, good morning, Smith.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayowa. Thank you, thank you for this opportunity. And like as I was speaking right now I'm in Kenya. I'll be leaving Kenya tomorrow to Nigeria. And the summit, we have two phases to that summit. And if we want to
just 1 second before you speak, were you an advocate at the summit or were you an activist at the summit? You need to define for us which you were at the summit before you go on.
Okay. Okay, because of my language, well, I'm an activist. Yes, I'm an activist, and but I went there as an advocate, but I'm an activist. So, however, I just want to be sincere because I'm still right here in Kenya, and so, like I said, the summit has two phases. For me, my own opinion, and one is that there is a counter summit to this summit. Okay, I will not push more on that, but there's what we call the People's Assembly Summit. People like most of the communal people in Kenya, even across Africa, we are not given opportunity to be part of this summit. The summit, I don't use the word that is hijacked,
Correct.
but that is how it seems to be, even on Kenya television. Like I was right there, and certain people were denying pass. Fortunately, I was accredited, so I was there in the summit, and there are certain declaration, even for yesterday, the Nairobi declaration they did. People are still, posing eyebrow that even just one. Abela mentioned about UAE, the president, the amount they mentioned, that they were saying it is even in past amount he has mentioned in different forum that they brought right down in the summit. But the whole thing is that the summit was not people-centered. Unfortunately, yes, it was not people-centered. Unfortunately, people's voice was not counted. So certain advocates, activists came together, reorganized a summit close to where the main summit is happening, and gave people pass free. You can be there, and it was more African there because there were concert, there were everything. But in this proper summit, it was very formal, except where some of the booths, the Kenyan booths, one or two Kenya decided to do like a dance or something. That was it. So it was too formal, too, even when the UN president came, I mean, but it was amazing. Nigerian president didn't show up, unfortunately. I think the Minister for State Environment was even in the hall when he did this presentation. Okay. So I think the good thing about the summit is that all Africans heads per se, they came together, and at least maybe for the first time they had a voice, like, okay, this is where we are parting, or the pathway for Africa, whether it is genuine or not. But that's coming together, of Africans, including their leaders, like, this is our thing. Yes, it's our thing, but the sponsors and every other thing is hijacked by the global north, unfortunately. I mean, a lot of influences from here and there. But the good thing I will say about the summit is that there is this Africanism of, like, all the African leaders coming together, agreeing on this, carbon market issue, as well as adaptation, that is even the major thing, was downplayed in a way. In fact, I had to go to a Kenyan house where they had a side event and share my view, in a panel section, Pastor. I had to share my view that adaptation is critical, and there they even emphasize it. We talk about local-led adaptation and all the right. But in the main summit hall, adaptation was downplayed, and we're talking about carbon. Everything that favors the global north was what is being emphasized more, unfortunately. So, but it's a good thing that this is the first time it's happening in Africa, and I think maybe we'll get it better as time goes on. So maybe the next African country that we organize in the next African summit will probably maybe consider some of these shortfalls, and then. But I'm happy that Africa is doing something for Africans. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Smith. Thank you very, very much. I know you're really, really passionate about, climate change adaptation, and you've been doing a lot in the, I think, South, I think where you're based. So thank you very much. That was Smith's perspective. I know we had a number of other people there, but I didn't know that they were Nigerians from this fellowship at the venue there. Does anyone else want to share their perspective of the climate summit? If you can't speak, you can just type up your message in the chat. And remember that you can use the Q&A for specific questions regarding the topic for this week, climate change, sustainability, and global health. And
First off, Mayo, I just wanted to share a few thoughts about what Smith said. Thank you so much, Smith, for what you actually talked about. First off, you must recognize that, first of all, it is a high-level summit, and you should recognize that whenever you're talking about global style summits or continental style summits, you'll be having summits where head of state or high-level delegations will be. Representation will be very limited. This happens at, even at the UNFCCC, you would have very high-level sections where you would probably not even have access to, where, probably the president of America is coming, the president of the World Bank, quite a number of people are just very high-level summits. You must be very accredited to get into some of those places. And, for the, I hear your point about it being not a people summit, and I see that part, and I applaud what you did in terms of, setting up a parallel people summit, which is exactly how and what we should do in certain instances, where the summit should be points where we bring convergence of thoughts, and then we should even make our own declarations. So at global summits, you find a lot of side events happening where people actually bring positions, and those positions are represented within the global conversation. So it is first a very key thing to understand. This is a start-off. Yes, there might be a lot of Western agenda being pushed, and I hear your point on that in terms of focusing on things that are very Western driven. But you would understand that before you begin to play the politics of, when you're playing the politics of balance, you must understand how to first use where you are. You must define where you are. You must then be able to define where you want to go to, build the right traction, and then begin to move in that direction. You should also recognize, and some of the things we'll talk about today, is that a lot of the people that are making decisions in Africa today may not have the full understanding and may not be fully impacted by the conversations around climate change. So whatever they make as a decision may be off course that would impact us young people of the continent. And understanding that the continent is, more or less 70% young, it means that there is a lot of conversation where youths are supposed to participate, are supposed to be the one in the leadership. So essentially, think about it. How many young persons, in quote, that were under 40, I just wanted to use the age of 40, that were actually in those high-level conversations or were able to provide high-level conversations? And that's one on that side. And I want you to begin to think about it. How many 40-year-old presidents do we have in Africa? How many 40-year-old governors do we have in Africa? How many 40-year-old ministers of state or ministers of environments do we have in Africa? So before we begin to make conversations and say also that the leadership is wrong, the also part of it is that what is the young person doing to build their capacity in terms of the leadership? I see comments around the conversation around carbon credits, and I see how we're saying the carbon credits conversation is a scam. I think we should, as young people, not always quickly label things as scam. The conversation is somebody has proposed something on the table. If you do not have the capacity to actually modify it. So every time somebody brings something to the table, he only puts his own position. You need to then bring your position and modify it to suit you yourself as well. And that's the way global politics, global dynamics, global change is going to work. If we always focus on something and discredit it just from the face value of it and not bring superior value of saying we're going to be able to modify this to suit us in terms of policy positioning, in terms of our position. So essentially, we need more intellectually sound African voices that are young, that are leading these conversations, and that then bring this value to Africa. So think of it, this room probably has about 50 and we'll get to over 200 people in a very short time. Imagine if the 200 persons in this room are the ones leading conversations across the continent around the African, around the, the carbon market. Imagine these 100 people are the ones trained and are able to negotiate climate policies and climate change conversations at the UN. Imagine these 200 people are the ones actually leading the frontiers of advancing, the knowledge and delivery of climate action on the continent. That then changes the narrative because you have both age, capacity, and you then have, the right mindset. You have the right incentive. It is going to directly affect you, but we can't, we need to change the narrative of just calling something a scam and then begin to look at the alternative of how to then, build the right narrative and build the right capacity to be able to sit on the table and, speak to these decisions. We all know that the president of France right now is in his 40s, right? There was something he did to get there. So we need this kind of mindset that we need, to be able to build the right traction for the continent. We need the right young people. You have time, you have your social media, and we'll talk about that today. So how do I build the right traction? Do I build the right relevance? How do I get a seat at the table that allows me to be able to influence change? If this was a physical class, I would have told you to tell the person beside you that I am a change maker, and you can type this in the chat box. I'm a change maker. I am committed to making change, and I will do everything possible to make change incrementally around me. Because the biggest problem is we constantly we're focused on the wrongs and not looking at what we can do with the powers and the capacity, competencies, and resources that we have. So, always think about it. Go every morning you wake up, go find a sticky note, put it on the wall of your mirror, put it somewhere in your room. I am a change maker. I am committed to change. Everything I do every day brings me towards the change I want to see. One of the things Mayawa told you about me is that I work and I co-founded an organization called the Badili Institute. The Badili Institute is a convergence of two words. It's a convergence of a Yoruba word that means become, and a Swahili word, Badili. D in Yoruba means become. Badili means change for my Kenyan folks here, Sasa. And that basically makes you understand that, this is a conversation that is Pan-African. We say Nigeria is the largest population in Africa, and Kenya is the cradle of humanity. Essentially, every time you're thinking about change for humanity, it must originate from Africa. And I'm happy that a lot of us are from different countries in Africa. So, this is where we need to begin to think about it, that if I make the right change happen in my community, around my sphere of influence, if I build the right traction, then I can begin to move change further across the continent. If I can speak to, 1 million people, via my social media links with the right mindset, then I can become and begin to make the right change, and that's really where I wanted us to start from today. I think we started off on a very fantastic note. I'm excited to, be speaking with everybody this morning. Let me just start from my first screen. Let me just go to my first screen. Yes. So we'll be talking about climate change, sustainability, and global public health. There is an intricate convergence around these three key areas. So anytime you see people speak about climate change, there is a big convergence or connection to sustainability and global public health. So I give a typical example, and I used this in the last class. Anytime you hear the last time you heard about the pandemic, you would remember that there was a problem with the global economy that is shrunk, such that a lot of businesses started dying, a lot of businesses failed, and that was a health incident that came as a result of human action within the animal population, and that's on one side. I use the example of Lassa fever again. Lassa fever is directly connected to human action from bush burning, bush clearance, and then the Lassa fever laden rats move into human population. They eat or feed on things that humans are fed on. They deposit the disease pathogen, which transfers to human beings. And there are a couple of films I would have talked about when you talked about the transference of things as a result of movement. So if there's heat wave in a community and on the ground, animals begin to come out from the subsurface because there's too much heat. That would automatically might be causing, snakes can come out and bite people, which can cause a public health issue. And there's so many things. And I just talked about heat wave now. For instance, I remember that there was a time in India that there was so much heat wave that a lot of people were kind of getting exhausted. In fact, I remember very clearly that sometime early this year and last year, the UK had issues with a lot of conversation around rising temperatures because of climate change, right? Which automatically increased the amount of cooling that you needed, which automatically increase your consumption power of electricity, and we then begins to potentially put certain people under certain public health or risk. And another very interesting part that you probably may be easily able to connect is when you have floods in a place. Floods bring quite a number of interesting things. So, for instance, floods can move non-pre-existing disease pathogens from a particular area that they are concentrated to another area because they've moved. 1, 2, it can unearth certain, previously, eliminated diseases. So, you have incidences of things like cholera, typhoid. Your freshwater system will be messed up. Subsurface water will be, interacting with supersurface water sources, and essentially, you would have contamination everywhere. And during those periods, beyond the drought, I said beyond the floods, you now have quite a spike in incidence of communicable diseases, and just moving away from that. you now have issues that you can think around, as simple as malaria, that just spikes because you now have potential areas where you can have a lot of uh, um, uh, host points for the mosquitoes to be able to grow. And you know that malaria is still the highest killer of population in Africa. So it essentially tells you how significant that is. From a business standpoint, when you think about sustainability, you begin to think around because companies require the exploitation of natural resources, and I will use exploitation of resources and the organization of resources, including humans as well. If a person, because of um, their inability to function at work, does not go to work, it means that the company potentially can lose money, right? So if you don't go to work today, if, for instance, look at how the global economy shrunk, like I made the example during COVID, as a result of the COVID, you find that the world went into a sort of recession because of that particular instance, that there was not free flow of money. In locations like Lagos and a bit of Nairobi, and a bit of the urban cities that we have across Africa, where there's a lot of traffic jam, where there's not full movement of traffic, you find out that the economy may seem to be prosperous, but it's not as prosperous as when there's ease of flow. So anytime you see transportation bottlenecks in a particular economy, what you find out is that the movement of money is also slowed down. So essentially, that is not a proper, fluid, and seamless economy. But while we're speaking about economy, there is a two-way school of thought when we begin to talk about climate change, sustainability, and public health. We begin to talk about, how do we manage the economic balance of all of this, and how do we manage the real balance of all of this, from an environmental, from a sustainability, and from a human-centered, growth, or from a development angle conversation. So those are two things that I also wanted to establish in this conversation. Now, the goal of this course essentially is to kind of equip young professionals across low and medium income countries across the world with the knowledge and skill sets needed to address the challenges of climate change and sustainability in the context of global public health. Now, there is a predominant understanding of what global public health is, right? But you should begin to look at global public health within the domains of global development, because, if you look at the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of need, one of the fundamental things a human being needs is good health, right? And when you begin to look at what WHO calls good health or health, you begin to see the very well encompassing conversations of even mental health as a part of the process. So my environmental health constitute a part of my good health perspective. So if I live in a place that there's squalor, it also affects my ability to function, to be productive, and it also minimizes my optimal value of delivering my goals. So essentially, when you're thinking about global public health, beyond just some of the regular things you look at from, what we speak around, disease prevalence, there is also a strong environmental context within that aspect. So the learning objectives of this course fundamentally looks at, what are the basics of climate change, sustainability, and their impact on global public health. I know that quite a number of people, I've heard some of your responses. I've read some of your chats already in the chat. I saw, defining what climate change and sustainability and their impact on global public health is something that we'll talk about in a bit, and it's going to be interactive. Very much so. Then they'll be identifying the key challenges and opportunities in addressing climate change and sustainability. One thing I was really sit on, because we started on that point, is how do we then begin to develop effective strategies for promoting climate change and sustainability in the context of global public health. I like when I asked the question from And I'm going to use you as an example a lot because, you know, you just talked about being at the African Climate Summit. But, you know, when I asked you the question, did you act as an activist or an advocate at the summit? And you quickly told me that you went as an advocate, but you're an activist. So there should be that understanding that, you know, you can be fluid as a person. Activism is something, advocacy is something, but they are strategic. There's a way to strategically position your messaging that allows you entrance into high-level conversations, and you can then begin. And we'll talk about that. How do you develop effective strategies for promoting climate change and sustainability within the context of global health? This is extremely important. Why is global health the you know, what do you say, the umbrella conversation here as against economics, right? And you remember, I remember this from a very long time ago, that health is wealth. So if you want to measure the performance of an economy, also measure the health of that economy. So if you make the economy function in terms of the people are healthy, a healthy population is a wealthy population. So go and check the social determinants of health as defined by the WHO, and then go and check you know, GDP, per capita spending of countries, and then go and check the, you know, their prosperity indexes and their, you know, human development indexes as defined by different areas. You know, you'll find out that those that have higher GDPs have also higher per capita spendings on health, also have higher level of wealth quartiles in the economy. So there's a connection directly between your health and your wealth, and this is very defined in literature. So we'll be talking about, you know, how do we then build the effective strategies of, you know, and using climate change and sustainability as the real entry point into the context of global public health. Then, you know, just like the Nairobi Declaration, we're talking about what understanding the role of policies, regulations, and international frameworks in addressing climate change and sustainability. At that point, we'll be just discussing some of those climate change conventions, the UNFCCC. You know, Nigeria has a climate act. I know Kenya has some climate conversations. You know, what are we doing as young people to promote those conversations? And I want to dwell more on the presence or absence of regulations. I will be talking more about the effectiveness of communicating and ensuring that we as young Africans are getting people on the continent to know about the regulations that exist and how we can navigate around those regulations. And, you know, how do we do our citizens, build citizens engagement, and even partner with government in ensuring that we grow these conversations. And I must tell you, as I am more around progress, I am also ensuring that we're going far rather than trying to just go fast, right? And I understand the power of using their strength, but we must understand the power of collaboration and working with government to ensure that certain things are institutionalized. Change cannot be done without building it within the framework of policy, regulations, and frameworks that, you know, are entrenched, are institutionalized, and then so that change can be sustainable in of itself. Then we'll be talking about developing our skills in communicating and advocating for climate change and sustainability within the context. Basically, this just talks about cost content, understanding climate change, identifying challenges, developing strategies and policies. So because I have the mic, I will just open the mic again, you know, and I would not mind, you know, Mayowa, we open this up. When we speak about, in just the next 5 minutes, I want us to discuss something. When we speak about climate change and sustainability in Africa, what's your perception, right? What do you think? And I would like 3 responses, and I would like a minute each for each response. What comes to mind when we speak about, you know, climate change and sustainability in Africa? Mayowa, I've opened the mic, please.
All right, thank you. Do we have volunteers? So when it comes to you hear about sustainability, yes. Were you going to say something, Abiola?
No, please go on. Go on. Please go on.
I hear the sound. Okay. So yeah. So if you're not able to speak, you can just drop your comments in the chat. So let me release the mic to Smith again. And please, the intention of today's class is that it's very, very interactive and we can learn from each other. So I would also take our comments if you are not able to speak. Yeah, okay, please go on, Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Maiwa. Thank you once again, and thank you, Abella, for engaging us in this conversation. Yeah, quite interesting. So climate change and sustainability in Africa, like putting in the context of Africa, my own opinion, I think is how to do it. So I will just illustrate quickly, and then make my point. I think it has to do more with the impact of climate change and how we are able to address it, in terms of mitigating that impact. What are the modalities and methods we are using, to probably fight against that climate change and ensure, it lasts. Like, not a solution that is short-lived. So that sustainability means that you're bringing out a solution that will, last for a long time, so to speak. So in River State, for instance, where I'm probably based, we have this situation we call the black suit, probably because of the impact of climate change in that region. We have a lot of oil and gas companies, and because of the burning of fossil fuel, and then we experience this black suit and other kind of, pollution. The air quality is very bad there. So I think there are some kind of young people within that space. They are also trying to put up certain device to mitigate that. They didn't even wait for advanced technology or even government to do much, because of that. There are some students, girls, to shock you, girls from a secondary school, they just came together, did one kind of air purifier. I don't know how they did it, but they just did something. And it's quite sustainable. They've been using that in the school, and but it's not in mass quantity, or so I think they didn't maybe need more license, more kind of, but at least they were able to come up with something that helps them to manage that situation. So I think sustainability and climate change, we already know is temperature and all those, but I don't want to go in the grammar side. So I just feel that it is putting up measures that last longer, that last the test of time, the African way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Somebody else? Two other people, please.
So we do not yet have volunteers, but one thing I want to say about it, and for each and every one of us, here is that, okay, currently you're planning your capstone project, and I mean, some of you are already coming up with different innovative ways that you can then address climate change in your environment, in your community. Some of you are already thinking of online approaches. Some of you are thinking of stuff in agriculture and all of that. So if you can speak to your projects to really be of advantage, that we can listen to those ideas live and get the feedback from the facilitator. I think that would be really, really nice if you can do that. So if you're confident of yourself, and really it's not a matter of being confident, but we want to hear from you. When you hear about climate change sustainability, I want you to speak to the project ideas that you're working on. So while we do that, if you would need to speak, please just with the raise of hand, just indicate. Smith just spoke about, give a specific example of what is happening in his community and the actions that is being taken.
So let me continue, Mayawa. So while people are probably thinking about it, so I like what Smith said. It talks about mitigation strategies, right, for us to be able to adapt. So one of the things I want to give you historically, that man consistently, as if you look at it from the evolution of man, and if you look at historically from science, one of the biggest things that man has been known to do is to build strategies to either mitigate or adapt, right? So the complexion of the human, the complexion of the African population and the complexion of the Mongolians, the different variations in our genetic predisposition has been a function of the adaptation to climatic conditions and environmental factors around us. So essentially, I quickly would let you understand that it is not for our lack of ability or capacity to adapt, it's for our willingness to wanting to adapt, right? So fundamentally, climate change is not essentially only about an adaptation conversation around it. One. So on one side, and I wanted to also pose this to you, Sanda was writing and was speaking at the CNN recently on Sanda is the UNGC, that's United Nations Global Compact Secretary, and she's African, she's Kenyan, Sanda Ojambo, and she's female, by the way. So for the females in the room, you have something to look up to be a global climate advocate, a climate justice, a social justice advocate. And there's a strong component of gender within the climate conversations. Maybe in future series, we can have, somebody's already talking about demystifying the terminologies around the climate carbon market. Maybe in future series, we would have conversations around the implications for gender and climate. I recently met a friend from the University of Waterloo or Manchester. I can't remember which of them. And basically, she's in country in Nigeria doing things around the Niger Delta and the core northern areas around conversations around climate. Now, going back to what I was talking about, Sandra Ojambo, she was mentioning, and this is very well established in literature, that Africa only contributes about 3 to 4% of climate negative action. In case we only do 3 to 4% of the emission. Africa, beyond being the green belt and the cradle for development, is also the highest impacted continent around climate change. So when I mean that from different layers, and I want you to see that. Today, our population is about 1.3 million. The growth of the Africa is the next continent that will grow massively in terms of population. Countries across Africa, such as Nigeria, is estimated by 2050 to be higher, one of the top 3 most largest in terms of population in the world, right? So it tells you how Africa will grow significantly. But one of the things about growth of population is exploitation of resources. And you can understand why Nigeria or any African country will grow this fast. I just mentioned at the beginning that 70% of the population is below 40. That is if you look at reproductive age, is between 15 for women, 15 and 49. Essentially means that they are in their reproductive years. So essentially, automatically, if you look at the factor of where we are right now and everybody decides to focus on a single next generation policy that China did at some point, but that's been on the light note. But if you decided to say you already have times 2 of the population. So times 2 of the population of Africa right now means 2.6 billion instantly. Now it tells you what that means, right? It's 2.6 billion. If you now do times 3 based off of one person just giving back to 2 people, that is, we can do the maths, right? So it tells you how from from an African ideology perspective, you cannot fault people for wanting to actually procreate. It's a biological need, it's a social need, and you can't change that part of the African mind. And it's a global thing. Some countries now are asking for people to come and stay with them because they have a elderly population and there's no youth population because they created a policy. So the African way is not actually essentially a bad way, right? If you go further down the line for those that have gone more advanced, they've created it. So that's we're speaking about population sustainability in an interesting way, and that connects eventually to certain things, and I will connect that to public health and practice, and sustainability or climate change practice. There are certain African values in terms of agriculture, in terms of regeneration and social values that actually help you to maintain certain balance within the ecosystem that we unconsciously have lost. I have seen things from the northern part. I've seen agricultural practices from Ethiopia, from northern part of Kenya, from Nigeria, that literally from other parts of Congo, that literally talks about interesting traditional land tenure systems, land rotational system, crop rotations that actually help to maintain the integrity and fertility of land. And today, where we're speaking about hunger in Africa or lack of food in Africa, there is a strong connection to the fact that we're trying to adopt, new practices that are somewhat alien to our environment. It's just like we're bringing new policies, and there is that slowness in adoption of those new policies because they are not natural. So you then have a conflict somewhere where the people are not able to quickly, jump on the wagon. Unfortunately, most of these practices are, kind of backed by funding from the West, which essentially means that when the project does not move ahead and the funding has stopped, the project dies. So which puts people in a very uncomfortable position. So sometimes when you think about sustainability from a global perspective, there is always the understanding of how are we pushing and that's where we started off today. How are we pushing the narrative of the African agenda? And when you think about sustainability from that perspective and climate change from that perspective, you first understand the need. First, there is a need that we should have, global heat levels at below 1.5 degrees. Now, so what am I doing as a person within my community to ensure that happens? Sustainability speaks about ensuring the consumption of, of resources in this present for this present population, and ensuring that there is enough that would sustain the next generation. So it is not just about creating mitigating strategies because of this generation. It's enough that the future generation in terms of the planet can actually be happy that you left a planet for them that is green, fresh, and can survive on its own. So that is the thinking you should be thinking about. It should be about how do I ensure whatever I do today is going to keep safety. So think about it. And so I remember something that Mo Ibrahim said, and I use it in the context of this because of how it's applicable. How would an 80-year-old leader provide feedback in terms of population to his people? He doesn't have any incentive to provide the right policies because he's an 80-year-old man. He doesn't have a future. Essentially, not because he doesn't have a future, but he's a grandpa and he should be preparing to go and rest. But a 40-year-old man has the incentive of keeping things correct. A 30-year-old man has, and woman has certain things, they have the right incentives. So when we speak about sustainability, always look at it. When we speak about climate change, always look about it as how do I preserve? So I like to see things always from a positive angle. And I turn it to an action word because I see it as a call to action. What do I do as a young person to ensure that I leave the planet, I leave my environment, I leave the society I live in a better place, in a better way, that the next generation, my child's child, which is my grandchild, my next 2-3 generations will be able to find something tangible. Every country in the West that we see today that we celebrate as Africans were built on the backs of certain people. And I don't want to get into that conversation of that, Africa helped build a lot of the West. But the conversation is, we should be able to replicate what we did for the West on our own continent as well, by building our own continent with our own work, with our own sweat, and leaving something great for our generation. And, and this is a principle of greatness that is battered in different countries and in different times, right? So we are in such a time as when we're speaking about sustainability and climate change on the African continent as African people, we should be thinking about, yes, climate change speaks to deforestation. There's a component of it. How do I, as a young person that knows that there is need for, a green cover how do I participate? How do I encourage people to know more in those hard communities, to reach communities? Maybe I'm from the northern part of Kenya. Maybe I'm from the northern part of Nigeria where there are certain parts of it. Maybe I'm from the very arid zones of Nigeria? How do I of the northern part of Africa? How do I begin to look for collaborations with people to magnify conversations around afforestation, right? So because we've talked about deforestation a lot, then how do I then begin to speak the other side of it, afforestation? So unlike on Monday, I had we started speaking about all the terminologies, but today I'm focusing on the call to action around what we need to do, because these things are things that we can pick up, we could do Google searches and we'll know the meaning of them, right? When it comes to climate change, one of the biggest things I've always talked about is that other than the fact that we're so fossil energy dependent globally, and that's not the fault of ours. Africa has significant deposits of crude oil. Many different countries are getting new deposits of crude oil. We have coal, we have all those natural resources. There is a global conversation right now around the exploitation of crude within the continent. I remember recently that in the DRC, I think in one of the rainforest, the green basins, I think there was crude found there, and the West was, is trying to pressure that we do not use the crude. Why I'm a strong advocate for that, because Africa is the carbon sink of the world. So conversations around the carbon market is very important in Africa. That would benefit Africa more if we play the game right, and that's very key. If everybody in this room and others that are on this course are able to understand and build the right advocacy and build the right capacity to have the right conversations, because the West is supposed to be paying Africa significantly for being its carbon sink. So it means that Africa can actually get rich off them committing correctly, and we need to have a superior argument to have that conversation. So, when we are speaking about that fossil fuel conversation, if we are not going to exploit our fossil fuel, there are other options that we have. From an environmentalist perspective, I'll say, we have, a lot of dams. Of course, those are affected by climate change because of low water levels. We also have the sunlight in Africa, the sunlight and wind in Africa. The average wind speed in Africa is unlike quite a number of places where you can actually use a lot of alternative energy, sustainable energy, to be able to actually power, electricity. So I did a mapping recently, and I read of that, even across Africa, if you put solar panels, right, or solar generators across certain parts of the Sahara Desert, you can literally power the entire continent, right? And that is, but the interesting part of it is that the lithium batteries, the lithium is actually in Africa that is exported to do the batteries, but the manufacturing of the lithium batteries is not done on the continent. So when we're speaking about energy poverty, we should look at the dynamics around the energy poverty. So in terms of industrialization, Africa needs to understand that it needs to move up its energy consumption a little, whether leveraging fossil fuels or not, or leveraging other innovative strategies, and ensure that it builds its capacity to produce those things that it will need and export. I spoke about energy poverty on Monday, and I said one of the biggest problems with Africa. So I'll tell you a story for the East African folks and the West African folks that are here. You will laugh at this. The East African folks eat a lot of ugali, and they eat a lot of cornmeal, right? And they're focused on there's a focus on specifically cornmeal. Now, the West African folks have a lot of what we call swallow, or food that is in bolus, that is made from different things. They make from cassava, they make from maize, they make from rice, they make from sorghum, they make from millet. All of these things have been made into some form. They even make from plantain, potatoes into flour, right? Meanwhile, the East African is focused on just a few things as as the major staple for food. I remember in Kenya there was a big issue around the prices of ugali when President Ruto came in. Now, if you look at this, we're both on the same continent. It means if there is a simple adoption of the style from West Africa, it means that there will be other staple foods that may be as alternative for consumption. So there is also the conception of the maturity of the African mind. We need to begin to adopt or check even on the continent. And I'm speaking to intra-Africa trade. So some aspect of our poverty is caused by the fact that we're actually trying to trade with the West before we trade with ourselves. So if Nigeria has a lot of sharp sand that can manufacture with quartz that can manufacture the solar panels, why don't we have intra-Africa trade conversations where we can begin to manufacture, in the continent and begin to move it? It drops the cost of manufacturing. I remember what Ghana did with respect to the chocolate. Ghana and Ivory Coast, and I said that all the chocolate factories that want to be able to get their cocoa have to actually come and open up their plants in Ghana. Why is that extremely important? You are going to export the cocoa and buy the chocolate, like we export the crude and buy the petrol, right? Any refined product has a higher value. Essentially, you have exported jobs to them, you have created jobs, and you are also going to repatriate capital to them. So they are getting value on both ends, right? But if the chocolate factory is here, it means that you are going to create jobs on the continent. There's going to be industrialization, there'll be energy transfer, and there'll be better economic growth, right? And that is exactly what. So whenever we're talking about the intricacy of economic development, we're speaking about climate change, we're speaking about sustainability on the African continent. There is an energy conversation. So anytime you're saying why Africa is not growing, there is also a factor that we have an energy deficit, and we need to address our growth perspective from that energy deficit. And our climate change conversation must be very connected to how we do a lot of conversations around energy transition on the continent, because that is what is going to power every part of the economy. In public health, if I go to a healthcare clinic and they don't even have, I'm a pregnant woman and I'm supposed to they want to take a delivery of me at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? It means I can't actually give birth with the lantern. Yes, we've been doing that for so many years, but I can tell you that quite a number of young ladies on these calls have become muzungus. They've become advanced. Their ages have become older. So they cannot do like our grandmothers that were giving birth in the bush or in the farm. I know people that would not be able to give birth in certain places. So, just think about that. If you go to a healthcare clinic and they're supposed to do a wound dressing for you, and they are using a lantern to do the wound dressing, I know a lot of you say, so I know a bit of Swahili, I know a bit of different languages on the continent. You see people make very interesting size because that is it. That's already energy poverty translating into healthcare. Every aspect of what you think about, there is a connection to the availability of power, access to power supply, access to quality water supply, and those are key things within even the public health perspective for delivering quality care. So water, sanitation, and hygiene is key as much as energy is key. So, one key thing from a public health perspective that you begin to think about is that, and we started with this, is the conversation around increased vector-borne diseases. I talked about the issue of flooding. Ebola has a strong conversation around, vector to human transmission of existing diseases. Of course, now we're going into areas because people are looking for food. I want to establish something. What people don't get, and I want to use this particular slide to speak about this. Every time you speak about climate change and you speak about insecurity, there is, as I said earlier, when you speak about poverty and climate change, there's a real connection. When you speak about climate change, sustainability, and health, there's a direct connection. And when you speak about climate change and insecurity, whether food insecurity, water scarcity, any of the insecurity spheres, there is a strong relationship with climate change, and I would explain it. And I'll use the Boko Haram example, the Al-Shabaab example as a key example. Now, this is the scenario. Now, two communities exist. Both of them are farming communities. So with the farming communities, have people that are commercial. So some people will be in the primary economy. Some people will convert some of the primary product into semi-finished products. Some people will be trading across that value chain. And some people will be, doing business across that. They'll be providing ancillary services. So the transporters, the, warehouse guys, the supply chain guys, and small primary industries, then which we now feed into bigger primary industries. Can you see the value chain I just created, right? From that. Now, imagine that these two communities that are nearby grow different crops, that have some dependencies, and they sell the different crops. There's cattle, and everybody's going fine. All of a sudden, the land in community B begins to deteriorate as a result of climate, variation. Maybe there's drought, maybe there's heat wave, maybe rain does not fall for a long time, and then their crops and the animals begin to die. What you begin to see is they begin to move from land A or land B to land A. What that will do, they will begin to pressure the land in land B, in the alternate community. What will begin to happen is that there will now be friction. Let it be that these two people have two different ancestral or ethnic lineages. There will be now community clashes. Those community clashes may not, as a rule of how we manage things in Africa, may not be addressed quickly, and those things begin to grow and morph into a militarized conversation where the clashes become, people adopt the use of IEDs and guns, and then it spreads like, a tumor and becomes a part. Now, what happens is that the moment they begin to move away from their cultural practices or their traditional practices of farming and commercials to things like kidnapping, thuggery, and they find out that there's less hard work to be done to make more money, they stay in that pathway, and then they begin to see that it is better we just go by this pathway, and it evolves. Unfortunately, there's now political action that goes into place where politicians and political office holders are also using them as a tool to maintain offices. And once they are empowered in one way or the other, they grow. So essentially, anywhere it is also very well established in literature, anywhere there is climate change action that is very predominant, you also have conflicts. So if you go to areas where they are very arid and have issues, you can also check the Middle East. Go and check the communities that have very, very high level of issues with agricultural practices. The South, the Niger Delta, South conversations where the natural resources were messed up, were exploited, and the water resources were messed up, made the youth go into, right? So you can begin to connect. So the moment your natural resource is depleted or is converted or has certain actions on top of it that does not allow people to live their normal lives, you begin to see that insecurity begins to creep in. So, and I'll use that to basically speak to, the food insecurity as well, and water insecurity. So, for any pressure you have on land, on any resource, once that resource, and we know that certain resources are scarce, once that resource is not equitably distributed or equitably managed, there is going to be conflict. And that's exactly what happens also. So from a food perspective, the inavailability of food would always cause, or food insecurity is connected to malnourishment. Malnourishment is connected to other, healthcare conversation. Water, sanitation, hygiene is big within the public health space. I use as simple as it is. COVID was just about you washing your hands and ensuring that disease pathogens did not get into your airwaves. Simple, right? As it may sound. But fundamentally, you still need water, clean water, and soap to just wash your hands. So it tells you how important within the conversation of that water is. As much as the planet is made up of 70% water, you still find that more than 70% of the population on the planet does not have access to potable water. In Africa, it's probably worse, right? That more people do not have access to potable water. How many people have access to, what you would have said, you would have called food today on the continent? And what food is supposed to be is, it's supposed to be balanced enough to be able to nourish your mind, body, in such a way that allows you to be able to be productive, right? So I'm not just saying you're putting food in your mouth. I'm saying that you have the right constituent of food nutrients that nourishes your body and mind to help you prevent diseases, and that's what good health is. So from a climate perspective, right? Once the food production circle is broken, either by any means, directly or indirectly connected to climate change, there is a significant impact on public health. Of course, just generally speaking, we've talked about it, that there is that there are connections around social factors with poverty, poor governance, and social inequality, and we can talk about this for so long. And I will use something I learned about poverty. Poverty is not just about money, and I want to use it in this perspective. Poverty is also the lack of opportunity, right? And I want you to think about it critically. Poverty is also the lack of opportunity, right? Either opportunity for education, opportunity for access to healthcare, opportunity for access for growth, opportunity to live. So poverty is the inability for you to use or leverage social means, not necessarily just yours. It could be a community means, social means that would have allowed you to live to the fullest capacity of your life. That's poverty. So anytime a person does not live to the full capacity of their life, they are poor. That is just the simple definition of it. So poverty is not just the inavailability of money, it's the inability of a person to live to the fullest capacity that they should have lived based off of social hindrances that have been created for them. Now, so there are so many things that hinder us from attaining, what we call full sustainability. Poverty is just one of them, right? And I remember at the beginning I talked about the conversation around economics. Now, so within the conversation of economics, I want you to begin to think about one key thing. And I'm trying not to just focus on the slides. I'm purposely going away from the slides because I know the slides will be shared with you. One thing I want to also propose in your mind is a concept I shared during the last class that I called conscious capitalism. Conscious capitalism literally focuses on you building a capitalist mindset that is necessary for the growth of Africa. Hold on. And so one of the biggest problems when you speak about capitalism to people is that they push back and say capitalism is exploitative. And I want you to reflect a bit. There's no continent in the world, there's no advanced society that you find that capitalism is not the driver of growth for that society. The reason why America is America. So I want you to Google something. Visual Capitalist has a map that tells us about the size of the economies of the world. It tells you about the size of economies of the world. It says we're in over $1 trillion economy right now. Then look at the size of the countries and look at the size of the continents. And I call that map the global dynamics of power, not GDP as you call it regular, gross domestic product. I call it the global dynamics of power. And you see the countries or the continents with the largest sizes of economies. Those are the countries that have the biggest power in terms of global dynamics. They can manipulate anything they want as much as they want. The reason why Russia is having the conversation and is holding the world at ransom is because of the size of its economy in terms of capacity. The reason why America can do what it does is because of the size of its economy. The dollar is the global currency caveat, and they can create sanctions on anybody because of the size of their share economy. And the share economy is created by the capital wielding side of the economy. The capital wielding side of America is your Apple. I know a lot of people are joining this call with Apple phones or MacBooks, or all of you, many people still use iTunes and pay for them. A lot of people are using Google, right? We're literally on a Zoom call right now. Zoom is connected to the United States. It's a capital conversation, right? Go and check the biggest startups, go and check the biggest companies. That the biggest valued companies in the world, they are all from America. It tells you that there's an understanding of building a capital mindset. Now, Africa is blessed with a lot of natural resources, but how are we then converting, those, what you call, I remember the days of physics, kinetic and potential energy, right? So we have potential energy, right, in terms of potential capacity to make wealth, but we don't transform that potential into wealth. Those are two different things. So, which is why we constantly are sending our resources to the West. They convert it to wealth, then they sell it back to us, and we are the ones that pay the rent for what we originally owned. So, we need to begin to think about, building an exploiting mindset that is focused for the continent. And I must put this caveat. Every continent builds its own type of capitalism. The European capitalism, even within Europe, Germany, if you look at the history of Germany, France, Denmark, and the UK, the kind of growth of their society was different, right? America has a different, India is running the race, and Pakistan is using a different race. India has a lot of AI tech, and they've led that significantly. What would Africa do, and what will you and I do to build our own capital block, right? Once we build our own capital block, we will make it, it has to be very, Afrocentric in its mindset, in its core. Every person on the continent that is thinking about the continent is thinking about building the opportunity. So for me, I'm not looking at the challenges here. I'm looking at the opportunities that we have, right? So we're young, we have age, we have strength, we have number on our side. We have the internet, we have information, we have the opportunity of the leadership that has failed, and that's the simple truth. We have also the opportunity of the leadership that has succeeded in other continents. So we have the capacity to learn from other people and then use that. So are you using it in agriculture? Are you using it in building, reduction in loss of biodiversification? Are you using it to, reduce the conversation about food insecurity or water scarcity in Europe? So my conversation here is innovate, innovate, innovate. Find new ideas, borrow ideas from the West, use those ideas on the continent and commercialize them. There's no problem in that. If it is rainwater harvesting that you have the capacity to be able to do with a new innovative strategy that helps us. So it is both a commercial enterprise that is growing, the continent, and at the same time, it's also something that is generating and self-sustainable. That's perfect, and that is exactly how we begin to think. If by sheer value of the money you make and the capacity you are able to build in the society, then if it is your county governor that you're able to speak with, then that be it, because he now sees that he's speaking to a millionaire in dollars in his community, then you will now have a place at the table. But more importantly is, first building that understanding that we need to build an economy that is significant with our own capacity and resources that is being led by us, is being determined by us. So and I've spoken about this. I've spoken about the key opportunities that we have in terms of renewable energy, right? Today we have 3D printing, right? 3D printing has been used to build houses, even on the continent. Can 3D printing not be used to build solar panels? Let's think about it. Can it not be used to build hydropower stations, and then we use it to power small communities, right? Can we not then create alternative sources that we can use? Can we borrow ideas from other places? Can we even use our waste? Because one of the biggest things that we've mastered on the continent right now is generating waste. All our plastic waste, can we use that plastic waste actually to generate energy for ourselves, right? So, and this is not something really new. It's something that we can just adopt the technology. Sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to domesticate it and move on because somebody else has done it, and you just basically leverage that. And, we don't have to take, 100 years developing when somebody has already taken that 100 years. We just get back at the point of 100 years and move on. For us, as young people, one of my biggest conversations is around how do we move? Remember when I was talking about how do we move from a consumption mindset to a production mindset? But that production mindset is going to be focused on a very environmental friendly kind of lifestyle. So I speak about something that is quite interesting that I've seen recently, and that is sustainable fashion, right? So young people have the capacity of being fashionable, right? Today, plastics can be converted into anything. I've seen plastics. I know Nike is using about 70% of renewable materials in their products to make the Nike shoes. And, I don't see the reason why, brands on the African continent. So if you're interested in fashion, why are you not using plastics around your community to be converted into? I know someone that's converting polyethylene bags into fabric or fibers, and those fibers are made into bags, into duffel bags, into seats, so tires are made into different things, right? And that's a whole industry spin-off, and you can put a superfluous brand on it. No global brand started, big. It started somewhere, right? And that's exactly where we need to be. So because Africa has significant resources, be it the fact that we have sunlight, it gives us an immense amount of possibilities, right? And we should define what the West has talked about us. One of the things that the West talked about us is because of the abundance of resources around us, we are not innovative, right? We're not thinking. So necessity is the mother of invention. That's the rule. But unfortunately, because there's been no pressure, we don't have. But now we're in a generation where the competition for natural resources or resources is so high. So we need to now become innovative in such a way that we begin to create an economy that is self-sustaining, which is where the circular economy comes into play. So how do I ensure? So I was using the example of intra-Africa trade. I know fish is imported in all parts of Africa into Africa, but I know that there are parts of Africa that actually still get better fresh fish than the others. Can they sell to one another? A flight comes from Nairobi to Nigeria every day at 2 p.m. That same flight can be a cargo flight from Nairobi to Nigeria. I say this, the Nairobians are the West Africans have a lot of fabrics that the East Africans like and the South Africans like. And there's planes from South Africa to Nigeria every day, right? That means we can literally move things across the continent if we needed to move them, right? So what I'm just saying is we already have the framework. We just need to tap into those frameworks and use them, right? There is the intra-Africa trade agreement, right? And I know that all of us know about it. What are we doing about it? How are we using that to foster the growth of our own economy? So that's key for us, right? The more we sell to ourselves, the more we buy new ideas. I give you an example. As simple as fish, I'll use fish as an example. The West Africans eat a lot of dry fish. Why is that? It means that I can buy fresh fish, dry it, and keep it for a long time. I've seen dry fish that last for 1 year, right? Why buy fish from China when I can buy dry fish from a West Africa and keep my money on the continent? Which means I would then begin to grow better fish on the other side of the continent, which is better environmental friendliness than buying fish that is from another place that they would have to ship longer, right? Which has a higher carbon footprint because they would have to ship it, store it. But this is coming less than 6 hours for me. Anywhere on the continent, the farthest on anywhere on the continent by flight or by connection is between 6 and 8 hours, right? So why are we not going our own? So can we move from, just building an economy that is dependent on outside and to an economy that is dependent on itself? On ourselves and building. So if I'm a fashion person in Africa, so every time I tell young people that are in sustainability and business, I tell them that my first market is the African market, 1.3 billion people. I don't sell to Nigerians, I don't sell to Kenyans, I sell to Africans. And that's exactly how you should begin to think. As a sustainability champion, as a public health champion, as a climate change champion, my population of importance is the 1.3 billion people in Africa. That's where I am from, right? So if you and one of, in fact, one of our tags is literally Dibadili Africa. Because why is Africa? Because, and it's a call to chat to Africa to say become change Africa. And that's because Africa is actual an end of all things, if you let me say that. So we should begin to look at that from that perspective and then see that part of it that makes it very important. So, our advocacy campaigns, should be focused on sustainable continents, right? And anytime you're thinking about sustainability, you may not always think about it, but if malaria is still the highest killer of people on the continent, it tells you, and malaria is preventable. You think about it. And what really causes malaria is the mosquito. What really allows the mosquito, this is vector-borne. What really causes the mosquito? Dirty environment. It essentially means that we are dealing with fundamental issues. What really causes the mosquito to be in a dirty environment or where there are pools, right? No drainages, no proper sanitation, right? You can already connect all of these things to public health side things, to governance issues, to then proper climate issues, right? So we then can begin to say, how do we address all of these fundamental issues within our communities? So for instance, have you ever had a town hall in your community to speak to the people in your community to speak about how the drainages are blocked before you start talking about the national policy? oftentimes we like as young people to point to things that are away from our area of influence and the things that are within our area of influence. And I pick that as a call to challenge to you. Pick things within your area of influence there, make change there, and begin to grow. Pick things within your area of influence first. You know, the block drainages, the market center that is not cleaned, the street lights that are not on. Speak to your local council authority, your MCAs, your local government chairman. Speak to them, have conversations with them, have council or meetings with them, town hall meetings with them. What be the bridge between the community and your local champions, and bring the cases of the community to them, right? Is it that young girls are getting more pregnant in the community, and that's a big deal in your community? Is it that people have a feel of insecurity in your community? Be that local voice in your community that brings change into the community. And this then transcends you, because when you have that legitimacy of voice, you can then bring pragmatic change and action into those communities. And that is when you can become a proper advocate. You cannot, as much as you may have a narrow point of view of advocating for climate change or advocating for public health interventions, you are still a voice of reason. And that voice of reason gives you a platform to be able to communicate other, transcending change conversations in your community. So, I would pause here because I know we're a bit before we go into the third module to just kind of have a few questions around, examples of things that you've done in your community or you're looking to do in your community, and you're saying that you don't even have an idea of the pathway to go about it. So Maiwa, maybe one or two persons, let's just talk about something that before we go into developing effective strategies, around climate action, climate change, sustainability, and public health. Maiwa, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for our facilitator. The country groups have been buzzing. I mean, the class has really been very practical, and I don't know if it's just me. I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much. I feel I've said so much about sustainable lifestyle and the things, repurposing a lot of innovations that we have at the moment. Let's give some of us opportunity to speak to the things that we've learned from today's class. I'm seeing Dr. Maximilian Roberts. Dr. Maximilian, you can unmute your mic. Thank you.
Yeah, so one key thing I'm taking home the morning.
Hello, Dr. Maximilian. Okay, thinking this must be a network signal.
Maybe there's a network issue. Yeah.
Yes, I'm thinking that also. So let me allow Ruby also chime in his thoughts. Hi, Ruby.
Hi, hi everybody. The lesson today was very, very insightful. I actually felt very tiny, not doing so much, yet there's so much you can still do. And knowing that we have the greatest market with the largest population from Asia, which is Africa, and taking from your lesson today that we need to innovate as youth. We need to speak. As long as we do not speak to our leaders who are already in these institutions, we will not make any difference. We'll just be advocates of words, but advocates of not action. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing this very, very mind-blowing and very, very opening subject when it comes to climate change and what us youth can do. Because I feel we always feel that there's very little we can do, but after such sessions and such impact programs that HESI has put for different youth across the world and the continent, we are privileged to learn more and continue to build on our advocacy as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Good to hear
Ruby.
that.
Thank you for your kind feedback also. Do we still have time for one more person?
So maybe we can take it progressively, so that because I know we don't want to keep people too much in the time. So I read a question, on the comment says reduction in meat consumption is one of the strategies to reduce climate change. Now my question is that won't the population of animals increase, leading to more grazing of land, more digestion, increasing methane emission, leaving land bare and causing erosion? So this is what you would call the ironic tale of two cities, or the conversation around the chicken before the egg or the cat before the horse and things like that. Those very complex conversations, right? There's no direct clear answer to this. So you cannot deprive, so let me make you laugh. You cannot deprive a traditional African man of his meat, and woman inclusive, right? So I know there are probably a number of people on this call that are bougie, that eat their meat medium rare or are vegetarians. No pun intended, But the truth about it is that as much as we speak about meat production, in the West, and I just want to refer to this, and this is one of the very classic examples. In the West, there's a conversation about not moving your cattle, but moving your beef. So I say this: the eastern parts of Africa have mastered the art of growing beef. Can we leave, for instance, the eastern part of Africa based upon building superior rail and communication networks across the continent, such that a majority of the beef comes from the eastern and northern part of Africa? Question mark, right? Essentially, right? Because they have land, they master the art, then we have different varieties. Good. Can we then leave the vegetables and the grains and some other parts of foods that we know, the yams, the tubers, to the West African and Central African guys, right? And I'm just using examples for instance. Can we leave all the people at the coast, that have mastered the art of fishing and fishery, to actually be the primary countries that contribute to the fish and protein value for fish in the African economy, right? So what I've just built in my head with those questions is, can we build a coordinated dependent continent, right? In such a way that some of these things that we're talking about can be mitigated, right? So when you're talking about methane emission, do you know how much emissions that you're already creating as a result of the refuse that you are creating, not just from the cattle? Yes, the cattle create methane. I agree with that. From their poo, but imagine if you are actually then using the feces of the cattle into biofertilizers, essentially one, or you are creating bioreactors that can actually use that for creating energy, right? So then it becomes a win-win. Because one of the biggest things we try to do is lifestyle modification and adoption of everything that looks like it's possible. So I give an example. Today, the West will tell you that eating a particular thing is bad. Then research will come back later to tell you eating that thing is actually good. So there's always going to be research for and against something, right? And you will never know what is or what is not, right? And I agree with you that there is a big contribution of meat consumption and methane. But you cannot remove from the fact that, would you say then that the population of man should be no longer meat eating? Do you not think that there might be health conditions that would now predispose humans to, right? So there's a flip side to every, how do I put it, scientific or, well established school of thoughts as well. So we need to then balance that out. So that's where I wanted to come from with regards to that, for that particular question. So when we create a cross-dependent economy, going back to my proposition, what it does is that other than creating jobs, we create value that everybody is able to actually glean from. And that then creates better conversations. Right. So, I don't know if you can give me permission to go back to the models, because we have about 30 minutes before the end. So I just dive in directly to developing effective strategies, You know, one of the things I've seen is that one, it is not for the lack of policies, and we will go into that in a bit. It is not also for the lack of frameworks. One, it is the fact that we're not actually exploring or exploiting the opportunities that we have. So today, patents already exist for different kind of use of renewable energy. So for instance, I discovered that there is patent for vertical windmills, bladeless windmills, and you can look it up. I have seen people optimize solar panels in such a way that the solar panels are vertical on the walls. They are string strips, right? Technology already exists for all of these things. The only difference is that the technology is in the West, and the West is constantly trying to find new technologies, right? I was speaking earlier this morning, and I was speaking with someone, and we're talking about sharp sand, and we're saying that we could get quartz from sharp sand. And I was saying quartz is a part of the things that can be used to build glass, which essentially, we're just talking about the connection of things, right? In terms of industrialization. We have all these resources. Africa is probably the only continent that has every natural resource you can think about in abundance. Every. And I mean every. Even to plutonium. We have everything on the continent. How are we converting those things into on the seas across or that surrounds Africa alone, the waves of those seas can be used. The Netherlands have built technology to use waves to power electricity, right? So my conversation still goes back to what I've said earlier, right? Some of you may probably be connected to professors of environmental sciences. Some of you may have relationships with people in government. How do you engage them first with intelligent ideas? So there's something called a policy brief. A policy brief is a document that captures your thoughts in a very logical approach that is shared with policymakers. So if there's something you will take out of this conversation, is you need to be able to develop policy briefs for engaging policymakers. And it's like an open letter, right? And the truth about it is that many times we feel that the political players don't read these letters. They actually do. Many times you think that your social media posts are not read by policymakers. They actually do. Many times you feel that nobody's reading your posts on social media. They actually do. Very interesting thing is to first understand your position of power, right? When it comes to the place of things in the ecosystem, and then using your own power of relevance to basically do that, right? So I wanted to start from that base point, right? Because you must be able to then communicate your strategy and ensuring that strategy is sound. So you must be able to understand first, you'll be able to do your own research around the strategies, showcase examples where those things have been done, right? So if we're looking about renewable energy, I use this example. Every time I speak to a strategic policymaker, what I want to find out from that strategic policymaker, what legacy they want to leave behind. When you look at Maslow's hierarchies of need, a person gets to a point where they want to go, they've reached an echelon in life where they want to actually achieve self-actualization. Self-actualization is not about money, it's about they want to leave a legacy. And many of the political office holders like self-actualization. And so there's a way to play to that gallery for them. It's not about whether you like them or not, it's about getting your stuff done, right? I would rather vote a person that is attuned to a young population that is not young than vote a young person that would mess up the office and not give young people better opportunities. So it's not about the age, it's about the dynamics. So you must understand that. That's first of all. Then, so that way, I would provide to them strategies in my head. So this, you should be able to do your own desktop research. So we're talking about solar energy. Is your own community able to use solar power? Good. What is the cost of solar power in your community? How can it be funded? There are two organizations I used as examples in the last class. One is Budget, and the other is Follow the Money. Now, what Budget does is literally explains the budget of a state, community, or people, so that people can understand what the budget provisions are. Now, sometimes budget is made without recourse to the needs of the people. You first must understand what is on ground before you can start advocating for change. That's number one. Number two, if spending is not done correctly, which is what Follow the Money does, or if spending is not done at all, somebody is holding somebody accountable, which is the place of communicating with the policymakers, right? So before you want to be able to create an effective strategy for modifying anything, whether in climate change, sustainability, you must understand what is on ground. So do well to find out. One of the things I'd written about the note for this class was that, do you even know what is in the Nairobi Declaration? What is the implication of the Nairobi Declaration for your country, for your county, for your state, for your area? That's very key. That's one. Number two, how do you make your local person or your local administrator, whether state, whether governor, whether province, whether MCA, how do you know? How do they know about the implication of the Nairobi Declaration? Which means you have to communicate that to them in an open letter, in a simple manner, right? How do you then bring that to other aspects? So as we're speaking about public health, for instance, what is the implication of the Nairobi Declaration on public health, right? So everything has an interconnectedness. How do you bring that to the simple form? Then what are you requesting of them to do? You need to have a call to action. So many times we're speaking to policymakers. So while I was reading our chat at the beginning, we were all saying that the carbon market for Africa is a scam. And so what? So what do we do? I'm just saying it's a scam. And so what? What do I do about it? If it's a scam, so what do I do about it? There's no call to action in that. That's just a comment. So we need to give people the call to action. And some things may be obvious to us, maybe because we are triggered by age, we are triggered by information, we're triggered by our heightened sense of intelligence and information because we're in the information age and we have access to it. We need to provide people call to action. So what? It is a scam, and so what? So I'm doing a landscape analysis on the policy, on the effectiveness of policy in a place. What am I asking after I do my landscape analysis? What are the steps I am requiring, right? And that is exactly how to build effective strategies. I must be able to identify what the problem is, provide a background, identify what the problem is, prefer solutions, show me examples of where those solutions are work, and give people exactly what the steps are. And that is this best structure for a strategy. If you don't show me how to solve a problem, then you are not solving the problem. So while the same way I told you at the beginning that I said you should write in the chat, I'm a change maker, right? I provide pragmatic solutions. Pragmatic solutions means practical solutions. So while you're thinking about being a change maker as well, you should be thinking about providing pragmatic solutions. So I knew this as a boy, that people pay for value, right? So in the signature or in the transaction of life, people only pay for value. So the more value you provide, the more transaction flows towards you. The more relevance you want to get in life, the more value you should provide. A higher value gives you higher transactional cost. So I heard a story a very long time ago about a young man, an engineer that was supposed to fix a ship, and he had learned being an engineer for a long time. So they called him to the rig, and he fixed the thing in 45 seconds, and he had asked for a ridiculous amount of money. Imagine asking for like $5 or $10 million to fix something in a rig. And they flew him and he got there and he used like 45 seconds to fix it and he was going. And they said, you just fixed it in 45 seconds. But I told them, I have spent a significant part of my life learning how to fix that thing in 45 seconds, right? It is not the time that they are paying for. It is the value of what he has done. So imagine if your rig is not able to function. So think critically about it. If I want to give a person a strategy, what would that strategy do? How would I position it that it will solve the problem of the person? I don't need to look good, but the person can look good. So that's another problem. We need to trump our ego and focus on the ego of the person we're trying to solve the problem for. Because that's the person that needs to be good. That's the person that has the power. In the power dynamics right now, we are small, but we will get power by giving power or helping other people in power to be able to do the thing they need to do. And that's exactly how you gain power for yourself. You must get a seat at the table first by providing value. So that is a strategy for yourself. And in your strategy should be addressing critical things that will solve critical problems from the point of view of the people you want to solve the problem for and for the politician. Those two things are very key. Without political buy-in, there's nothing that will move. That is very key for you to understand. So whether we're thinking about waste management, whether we're thinking about, renewable energy, we need to think about that as critical parts of the equation. Now, of course, this just spoke to water conservation, for instance, as an example, and I'm going to speak to something around waste management, water conservation, and, bio conversations. Now, because we generate a lot of waste, either from household waste, and this is low-hanging fruit, right? And it can become a public health thing that we can do. So every day I think about it that the number of waste food that we have, despite we are poor, we still have waste food. Can we begin to create a lot of composts at community level, and then use those composts as biofertilizers, fix them into community schools around us, and begin to create community-based farms that are in schools that can feed the children in schools or the indigent children, and even the teachers, because the teachers are actually very poor. Let's be honest with ourselves; they are not well paid. We all know that, and then we can try all our, strategic thoughts around rainwater harvesting, drip irrigation in the school farms, right? And then grow enough crops. Except I know that recently there's been conversation across the continent that a lot of the school land has been grabbed by politicians. Yes, because those things were not used fully. So how do we, those ones that are still there, and that's also on the lighter note, how do we use those, school expanse of land, those community lands, to convert them using, our bio waste into biofertilizers? That literally cost us literally nothing to create and use to grow food, and using all the irrigation systems that we can think about to be able to solve that problem. So that's something that is also very key. And that is something we can sell as a strategy. We can build a small program at a pilot and then scale that program across the community as it grows. First, you have food, fresh food, even tomatoes. I know tomatoes, for instance, I think they grow in spades of less than 3 months. I know pepper, pili pili, like the Kenyans call it, grows in very short time. Cucumber, the rest of them, potatoes, right? Waru, whether sweet potatoes, whether oranges, right? We can grow those things. And interestingly, in Kenya, we have the ILRI, in Nigeria, we have the IITA. We can use those modified crops that have been adapted to our continent to be able, that grows very fast and produce large volumes in those small farms, and then we grow them, right? Kenya can try to attempt to grow cassava, and those cassavas that are coming from Nigeria. Somebody's raising their hand. Evan Gundi, please, you have the mic. Please go ahead and ask your question. Hello, I know somebody raised their hand. Do you want to?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, please go on and speak, Evan Gundi. Okay, or maybe just go ahead.
Two participants raised their hands. Okay.
Okay. So let me see Marvin's. So Marvin's, you can go and speak.
Okay. Please, in Ghana, there's lots of waste, and it has become a challenge. People pour waste in every place, even in water bodies. Some of us want to learn how to use waste to generate electricity, but we don't get avenues to learn it. So such opportunities, how do we come by such opportunities?
Okay, so just to hear your question, right? I like what you said. Ghana has a problem with people, and I can say this is peculiar to all Africans and all urbanizing cities in Africa. Waste management is a big deal. So specifically your question is, how do you first get people to get it? So your problems are at different levels, right? So one problem is you want to educate people to stop dumping waste in improper places. That's one level. Number two, then how do you capture that waste and use that waste to generate electricity or other resources? And number three is there's a knowledge gap in being able to do that. So I want to start from the last one. Today, you have the privilege of being in a generation where there's literally nothing that you're looking for that is not on the internet. I can't remember your name, but I can tell you right now, but your best friend is not human in this generation like it used to be before. Your best friend is Google and YouTube, right? Why do I say that? There's literally nothing you're looking for that is not in terms of knowledge already on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or somewhere already. Somebody has done a lot of training courses and most likely is a Western person. So I start with this. Do you know right now that plastic waste is also converted into bricks, interlocking bricks for construction? Do you know that biological or biodegradable waste is converted into compost? Do you know that tires have extracted oil from tires and the dust from the tires are used into interlocking tiles as well? So there is already defined technology that is already available, right? You just need to first decide and say, what part of this value chain do I want to play in? So research first your value chain that you want to play in. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing is, remember when I said you need to be able to engage with your local players. First, who is responsible for waste management? Is it the state? Is it a agency? Do you want to municipal agency to is that they're experiencing? Are they getting budget allocation? Are they getting budget release? What exactly is the problem they're experiencing? That's number one. Because if you don't understand their problem, you can't provide solution to it. So which means you have to engage with them. Number three is then you need to engage, which is also engaging with the stakeholders. You need to engage with the community. Is it that there's a lack of education from the community side, or is it behavior change thing? So humans have a problem with keeping with regulation. Is it that people throw inside the drains because of the fact that the waste is not collected on time, blah, 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 blah? You need to understand the challenges in the community. Then you need to build an educational program around that. When you build an educational program and an awareness program around that, then you can begin to solve problems. Luckily for you, you might be able to start pilot projects that allows you to collect waste and convert them in your community. There are myriads of projects that have been done by that. I know that I've heard of projects that have been funded by the Netherlands government. I've heard of projects funded by the USAID, the UK government. Almost every embassy has funded some kind of waste recycling project, one way or the other. So think about it critically. Look at who are the players within your space, which is the third part I wanted to talk about. Look at the players within your space, whether the NGOs or the development partners that are within your space that have done certain things like that. And then you need to develop a specific proposal in terms of how you want to implement a program. After consulting and finding out the problems of the agency or the people responsible and the guys that are working around that conversation. So those are very key stuff that you need to do, right? So from a stepwise approach, you can, for me, I would say give yourself a proper timeline, right? You should make it I will use the concept, the acronym in business of you do a proper, personal analysis of the problem, and then you basically are then able to create smart goals that helps you achieve what you want to achieve. So you have something in mind that you want to achieve. Is it that you want to literally eradicate the dumping of refuse in the waste there, right? You need to then look at that. So, this slide on the screen that you're seeing is speaking about policy and education, and that connects directly with that. So you need to understand what the policy of the government is around waste, for instance, specifically. and as with anybody on the call right now, you need to understand the policy around climate change. You need to understand what the conversation around renewable energy and sustainability around this in your community. Then engage the government around it, right? If there are gaps, let them know. For some instance, they may not know. So you may even conduct a simple, research, that you go around your community and ask them why they have basically, and you go and show that to the government. That becomes an advocacy tool because it's now population driven. This is the reason why we pour our waste incorrectly, maybe because we cannot pay for it, or the person does not come on time. You need to have all of the myriads of it. And if you go the same way, that same kind of research already exists significantly on the internet that has been done. I remember as a young lad in university, I did that same research as an undergraduate, right? Of propensity of people to waste. So those are the key things you need to begin to really think about. So those researches already exist. So based upon the outcome of your research, you then build an educational program. Your educational program lets you raise awareness of people at the heels of, wrong waste disposal. So things like cholera, the public health implications, issues of flooding, issues of just defacing the environment, all of those things, sanitary conditions, you then are able to provide that to them. So, for instance, I remember some programs I was doing within the public health space where I was doing social mobilization for malaria campaigns, and we're going into communities and and water sanitation and hygiene. We're going into communities and telling them how to use specific kind of methods of, how do you call it, cleaning their water, if you let me say that, like filtering or making their water cleaner. And at the same time, because we already had the ears of the people, we were talking about the use of mosquito nets. We were also talking about, the use of better environmental sanitation, because those things have convergence, right? So basically, what I'm just saying is that, and those programs came from the idea of, we discovered from communities that people were using their mosquito nets to fence their goat farms, to use as very, very funny things. They were not using it for themselves, right? So the concept around malaria prevalence or their prevention against mosquito bites was actually not as effective. So net distribution does not translate to net use, for instance, right? So you need to understand those levels of behavior change, right, for people. So, and you understand that when people, the human mind is such, human beings are such that, or the human mind is such that when it is accustomed to doing certain things in a particular way, you have to give it better incentive to do better things in better ways. So you need to define an incentive structure. So I give an example. There is a program that is in Nigeria, and because it's a public health program, it's by Social Care. So what Social Care does is that it collects recyclables from women in communities and uses that to pay for their health insurance. So the incentive for the women to bring recyclables is the health insurance, and they understand that people should have mandatory health insurance. So having to do that, it helps people to get money to pay for mandatory health insurance, but it now gives them the incentives, especially women and children, to go and pick recyclables, which essentially means that the environment is clean. Are you seeing how that is? So you need to be able to think about creating trade-offs sometimes. Now, they in turn, crush the recyclables, build them, sell them to waste recyclable users, and the value chain goes on. So you need to think about a critical strategy. And remember, when I talk about the capitalist system at the beginning, that's exactly a capitalist system. So you are converting what somebody is not using to create money for yourself, a sustainable business means for yourself, that you can turn to a big enterprise, right? This is something you will take to the bank and you get financed when you build a sustainable model around it, right? So I hope I've answered your question with respect to that, and I've been able to show insights with respect to that. Just give me a thumbs up, or you can respond on your call if that has given you insight. So, let me just go on. So I use that as a good example to have explained the concept of policy and education. So first, please do a landscape analysis of the policies that exist. If I were you, that should be an assignment you should go back to do for all the things you might be of interest in. Then, based off of those policies, Africa is not devoid of policies. The policies may be not compliant with the times now, but there's a policy that can be moved. If there's a policy right now, it's even better, because then you can begin to move to conversations of engaging with the policymaker. So are you going to engage with your provincial House of Assembly or your national House of Assembly? Then it means you learn the policy modification process, which means that you begin to lobby at that level for policy modifications. So you can write to the Senate, you can write to the House of Assembly. So those are the ways you can engage with government. That's on one side, right? So if I know what the policy is, if I want to change that policy, I can do that. If I don't want to change the policy and I just want to educate people, that's one scheme of it. I would educate people on what the policy says, what does this mean, and how does it mean. Now, if there's an agency of government that is empowered by policy that is not carrying out their action, I can write to them that this is what the policy says and this is what you should be doing. They need to take action. That's exactly what it means. That is how you're engaging with government. If it then means that there are certain things that the policy of government is not allowing them to, maybe there's a fund release that does not allow them, then you can engage. So look at your national budget, look at your provincial budget. So there are levels to those conversations around policy. That's on one side, right? Do you even have a policy on sustainability in your country, in your locality? Has it been domesticated? Do you have a policy of energy transition? One of the biggest balls across the continent is the just energy transition, right? Do you even know what that is? What is that being said in your country, for instance? How is that going to translate out? What does it mean for your municipality in terms of the just energy transition, right? And if that is the case, how are you communicating that to the people and the policymakers? Because many times, many of the policymakers that are sitting at the high-level meetings do not understand the technicality and the grassroots implication of some of the declarations that are made at the level of the UN. They don't know how to translate it to proper action, on-ground action. So you need to be able to translate that action for them and connect all of those dots, right? And that's exactly the responsibility that nature has placed on us where we are today. It is a responsibility we must accept. If you don't accept it, then you do not create value for the next generation, because you then miss the opportunity to insert something valuable that will be important for your generation now and for the future generation. Then the education bit is more an action bit, where there's no reason why. It's possible that there are people in power, there are people in government offices that don't even understand the implication of their offices. There's no reason why 2-3 of you cannot set up, a free capacity building sessions. Call people from AC, ask them that you want to do something somewhere, and they should please send you someone that can help you virtually. And you will do capacity sessions from your MCAs, for your, local government offices, for your municipal offices, on educating them on specific areas around, policies on climate change, on sustainability, and on public health interventions that connect to all of these things. So it's critical for you to understand that there are methods for you to be able to achieve some of these things without necessarily having to. So, and I think this is where I'll practically stop, because my time has almost finished, or my time has literally finished, is around building partnerships and collaborations that help you grow your impact. And I'll use this phrase that I learned from South Africa. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with people. And if you want to go far, you go with people. So I would want to ask you, and I say that and another one is that I have is that the value of your net worth is a function of the value of your network. So those two, those two have been my cardinal conversation. They've been my cardinal touch when it comes to this. And I need you to begin to think about, how am I building partnerships? How am I collaborating? I'm Nigerian. I have a friend in Ghana. I have a friend in Kenya. Can I learn from Kenya? What have they done in Kenya? The Ghanaian question that was asked now, is there someone that has solved that problem in Nigeria? What are the business cases that exist for this? Solve that problem on using the methodology? How can I domesticate it? Like I said, sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel already exists. Just basically use that will to build better value for yourself. So, please collaborate. And one key thing you notice that I am talking about collaboration at different levels. Collaboration with government, which is very critical. Please collaborate with the government partners. See, one of the biggest problems we have as young people is that we feel that government is apart. But look, if you collaborate with government grants you legitimacy and scale quickly. Every program I've done has always worked with government. Find civil societies that are aligned with your focus, with the kind of things that you're doing, and work with them. One key part is the private sector always has money to implement programs through their CSR. I tell you, and I kid you not. But the problem is that they are looking for actors. And the only way they can find actors that can do this are people that have shown relevance and influence over time. So whether you've been engaging with the government, they can find you. Your social media stream already shows your legitimacy. They can find you. You have engagements that is significant. People know you've dropped intellectual conversations. You've dropped newsletters. You've basically done things that have given you a lot of significant footprints. So that gives you value. So today, if you don't take anything from here, you should learn to build your social media presence, your presence as a person, to grow your importance and influence. You need to grow that. That is how people find out who you are. And I'll tell you a little story. As a Nigerian, anybody that's in Nigeria here will understand this. If you go to the embassy and you want to get a visa, one of the biggest things you see is that Nigerians are the most refused people to get visas, if I dare say, in the world. And that's a joke. But one of the things about it that I discovered was I was speaking to a friend that is from the US, and he works in the embassy, and it was making me understand that it takes about between 35 and 37 seconds for a person to actually define whether they'll give you a visa or not. And one of the things they will check is if I Google your name, what comes out of it. So if I call myself a development expert, please, you can Google my name, Abiola Oshiri. There's just one of me in the world. And you see the thread. Google your own name and find out what Google tells about you, really. So if nothing comes up about you, it's almost as good as you are fake. You don't exist. You don't exist, right? So Google your own name, and that's how you build. So when you build your own social media capacity, you begin to throw news out there. You drop a tweet, you drop a post, you drop a LinkedIn post, you drop a newsletter, you share it. People find you, and everything, kind of aggregates into your name. Use the power of the hashtag. The hashtag is probably the biggest things you can have. We've talked about policy and policy regulations, in passing, and I just want to touch around it. Basically, there are different policies that exist, but find those policies, engage with those policies. But more importantly, if there are lacunas in those policies, how do you get people to know about it? How do you collaborate with people to actually get people to understand the policy and activate the policies? There are agencies that have been set up by government that don't even know how to activate their own policies, and basically get things done. So help people to understand it now. And that's, this is already old because we have the Nairobi Declaration, for instance, that is not on this part. We go and study the Nairobi Declaration. What is the implication of that for me? And I'm already talking about communication and advocacy. For instance, let your social media footprint be very visible. Be visible on social media. Let everybody see you. Let everybody know you. Become a voice, right? I may not have best friends physically, but I may have 10 million people follow me on social media. I can become a super voice. One thing I want to tell you is that nobody will give you a place on the table. You need to create a space on the table for yourself. And in creating a space right now, the social media has created a platform for you to create a space. Don't just go to social media and watch skits. Skits are fantastic. Mr. Macaroni, who is a Nigerian, and many of the skit makers are also political activists, if you don't realize it. If you see some of their Fowls, who is a musician / activist, is also using his music as his politically conscious music that is singing. So you need to understand the concept that you can use social media and your art to actually move social activism as much as you want. And this is probably the last part where I'll talk about, right? One of the biggest things around anybody that is making change is their capacity to speak up. Two things. You can write eloquently and you can speak. You can write eloquently. And I'm using the word in a very interesting way. Eloquently in speaking and in writing. Though it is wrong English to say you can write eloquently. It means when I read your text and I'm using it, in just my own context, I should be able to read it and feel I can be captivated by your writing. Learn to write excellently. Be an excellent author. Every great person that you know, both great speakers and authors. They are excellent authors and they are great speakers. They are excellent orators and they are great writers. So you need to build that art. That is something beyond this course, beyond this fellowship, beyond this masterclass. One skill set that you should build is the ability to speak and write. And it's a single skill, but it's dual facing. I can write what I say, I can say what I write, and I can convey my message in those two mediums. Any medium I use, if I write a post, it must be excellent. It must bring sense and make people call to action, make them change, inspire them. And that is something you should even have. Maybe write a few things you want to target to become. I speak excellently. I inspire people when I speak. Make it your own, positive affirmation. And then practice. I gave the example of Obama. Obama practices every of his speech beyond the fact that he's a great orator. He still practices them. So how many speeches have you written and practiced that you are saying you don't need to rewrite and read your speeches before your speech, right? That's a joke. Please, it is important. Even practice makes perfect. That is something that we all know. Please, it is very important. Find community of practices. I know that there's Toastmasters that does speaking. I know JCI. Any young platform that you have, any platform that you have, you can introduce the idea of policy engagement in it. Your small community, how do you engage the policy person? How do you engage your MC? You need to put the concept of public speaking and writing as a key skill that you must learn. And those two skills are very important. Please, importantly, just as you're engaging traditionally your social media, please engage your traditional media. Whether you like it or not, some things will never get into the public eye. Some people are very archaic. They will only read their newspapers. It is important for you to engage, your traditional media and ensure that, get into networks that allows you to grow your footprint on both physical media, social media, or traditional media. I don't see at the end of this class that some of you will not be able to go and speak, on TV. I know there was a time that Nation TV was calling for young people, and Nation is in Kenya. There are so many, blogs that exist everywhere. So it's important. The Uganda Climate Action Network, people use traditional hashtag. There's Climate Wednesday that became very popular. You need to be able to engage with traditional media and use that traditional media methodology. We've kind of come to the end of the entire conversation. You can connect with me on social media personally and professionally at any point. You have the social media links, and I will just, open up the mic for a few minutes if there are questions or comments or things you'd like us to speak about before we come to the end of today. Thank you. Maiwa.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm just here laughing. I'm just here filled with ideas, and I'm sure this is a shared feeling amongst everyone here. Either they are able to express it on the live chat here or in our WhatsApp group. Everybody's saying thank you. Everybody is just really wild. Everybody is inspired right now. We want to appreciate you. We want to appreciate the time. And of course, we'll still see. Does anyone have anything to add before we officially close today's session? We really, really are appreciative of the fact that we've not had anyone complain of the time, even though we spent over 2 hours on this call right now. We really want to appreciate every one of us. We say big ups and keep up the good work, sir. Abiola Oshone, you can catch him on all of his social media. On LinkedIn, Abiola Oshone, on Facebook, Oshone Abiola. I think I'll be able to share these social media links on the groups. So keep it a date with us next week. We want to thank you again for your support. On the quick tasks, please ensure that it's good that that everything has been learned here. You are able to Abiola talked a lot about call to action. It's not just about the head knowledge. Do something practical. Something specific that shows that you've been able to learn, something today. So I encourage you to do that on your country groups. Just, share your ideas. You share your ideas, add your name, your country, and your favorite social media. And also in your social network, keep spreading the message about the Zero Carbon Africa Impact Program. Preach it, keep encouraging yourself. A lot of us have really big ideas. Don't kill those dreams. And also learn the power of, collaboration. We've been saying, and Abiola stayed on this topic a lot, the importance of leveraging networks. We appreciate every one of us. We hope we can have more of this kind of participation in our subsequent classes. Abiola, thank you very much. I don't know if you still have anything to add.
No,
yeah.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Happy to connect with you on the social media handles. Happy to hear your thoughts around, and happy to collaborate with you in areas where you feel that you might need help. So you have Mayawa that you can mail, and Mayawa can reach out to me or the rest of my team and the Badem Institute. And we're happy to provide you some support across some of your projects across the continent. Just let us know, and we can then structure some support for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abiola. All right, everyone. It's bye from me. Have a pleasant day, and let's keep on with our good work. Let's keep being active on our groups. If you have any other challenge, please, you can drop them on the WhatsApp group. We would take it up from there. Please do not be discouraged. I know some of you have talked about group participation, and it's one of the dynamics of leading a team. Please reach out and let us see how we can help you to achieve the aim of your project. And tomorrow is also the deadline for submission of our project proposal, and just try as much as possible, put something together. We will be able to do something about it. From me, I love you all. Have a blessed day. Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye, Abiola. Bye.